Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
We're going to look today at the prophetic fulfillments of 2017. We live in the end time right now. So every year is moving us closer and closer to the culmination of all things and moving us closer and closer to the second coming of Jesus to the earth. The election of Donald Trump is a big event in the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. He was inaugurated on January the 20th of this year, 2017. The world was shocked that Donald Trump was voted in. The polls said just the opposite would happen. So why did it happen? And does it have anything to do with the fulfillment of Bible prophecy? So when people went to the polls to vote, what caused them to vote for Donald Trump? It's a legitimate question. Well, during the campaign, the subject of globalism came up. None of the other politicians were even talking about it, but it wasn't long until the voters said, what's this about globalism? They began to be educated. Most of the establishment politicians had come to believe that we were moving out of the age of the nation state and moving into a new age of global governance. The process is called globalization. And the accepted theory was, look, the days of the nation state are over. We need one world government with one military, so there will be no more war. However, there were a lot of Americans said, so you mean you want us to forsake the Declaration of Independence? And there were people that even boldly replied, yes, we need a new Declaration of Interdependence. One world. We need to think globally. Well, Donald Trump came out and said, wait, I'm not ready to flush American values. I'm not ready to subject ourselves to a socialistic United Nations. And many Americans agreed with him when they decided which card to punch on Election Day. Now, furthermore, many people have had the feeling that there was something that was controlling both parties. And a vote against the establishment that had taken control of both political parties, and they were moving us into globalism. So a vote for Trump was a vote against the establishment. Nobody even used the word the establishment until this political maverick by the name of Donald Trump came along. Yet, we began to hear about the establishment, and a lot of Americans knew instinctively that the same powers had gained control of both parties. So in essence, we were voting for Tweedledee or Tweedledum. The congressmen were serving so long that they become a good old boy system, and corruption set in, and after a while, well, Donald Trump said, we've got to drain the swamp. I mean, the taxes went up and up, government got bigger and bigger, and it seemed like no matter which way you voted, the same direction was maintained by the U.S. government. Well, many people that had stayed away from the polls for several years because they felt like, what's the use? I'm voting for the same thing no matter whether it's Democratic or Republican. All of a sudden, they heard this man, Donald Trump, campaigning against both the direction of the Democrats and the direction of the Republicans, and what he was saying struck a chord in their hearts. So the polls were so wrong. None of the polls told the truth, because you had this silent bloc out here that had opted out of politics as usual, but they went to the polls and they voted for Donald Trump. Now, all of this is related in one way or another to the fulfillment of the Bible prophecy. Let's just pause a moment to talk about globalism. The Bible actually prophesies exactly what all the establishment politicians were aiming for, and that's a global government. In Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 and 2, it paints a picture of a one world governmental system that will obtain control of most of the world in the end time. However, fortunately, that prophecy shows Great Britain, Russia, Germany, and most of Europe together in this one world government dream. But America's not there. Now, we were going pell-mell toward globalism under the last few presidents, and in particular with Barack Obama. He was a globalist from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. He threw the borders wide open, come one, come all. And Hillary Clinton, when campaigning against Donald Trump, said, we don't need to build a wall. We need to build bridges. We need to open our arms to everyone, because we now live in a global society. Americans heard this and said, no, we don't want to live in a global society. We don't want global leaders somewhere in some ivory tower deciding how Americans will live, and our Constitution losing its force. That's not what we want. So they voted the other way. Furthermore, the vote for Donald Trump was a vote against lopsided trade deals that were bankrupting America. Now, the average citizen knew it. I mean, we were watching these deficits of billions of dollars with China, billions of dollars with Mexico, billions of dollars with Japan. We were losing every trade deal we were making. Well, you keep that up long enough, and you're going to be bankrupt. So our deficit was rising higher and higher and higher. The deficit actually doubled in 8 years of the Obama administration. I'm talking about all of the deficit accumulated from George Washington until Barack Obama. He doubled it. I mean, he had credit cards in every pocket. He spent like there was no tomorrow. Doubled in 8 years. What had taken 240 years to do, he said, I can match that in 8 years. And spend he did, along with the government, not just President Obama. But Americans looked at that and said, wait, we're on our road to ruin. Consequently, they said, and when Donald Trump said, hey, we need a businessman to negotiate these trade deals, we're losing every time. And Americans said, I agree with him. So they voted. A vote for Donald Trump was a vote against the ridiculous hoax of global warming. I mean, everybody was telling us it's getting hotter. You're going to die. The oceans are going to rise. Al Gore said they'll rise 18 feet by 2030. And Americans said, wait, I live by the ocean. That's not happening. And it's been cooler the last couple of years than it was before. And then we had 18 years running with no climate, no warming increase. And so people began to think a little bit deeper and found out that the climate change agreement, is sort of humorous. They started out calling it global warming, but when it didn't get warmer, they said, well, we'll call it climate change. You say, well, why were they so ambitious to sell this to the world? They don't care about climate change. They don't probably believe in it themselves. But It was their excuse to impose a world governmental system on all the nations of the world. They got together at the UN, they negotiated a climate change treaty, and under this treaty, if your carbon emissions rose above a particular level, you were going to have to buy carbon credits from another country, and so your money would flow to them, and they would mysteriously ship their carbon credits to you. They don't bottle them. They didn't put them in an envelope. All you had was an email saying, okay, you now have them. And you paid thousands and thousands of dollars because you were going over your carbon limit, and the businesses were going to pay millions. So what was happening here? This was a really smooth, sneaky scheme to transfer wealth from the have nations to the have not nations. It was almost like Karl Marx was running the government. Remember, that was his whole idea, wealth redistribution. And when Barack Obama was asked, do you believe in redistributing wealth? He said to Joe the plumber, well, I do think some wealth needs to be redistributed. Well, the bottom line is, of course, if you earn money, you deserve to keep that money. Now, all of us pay taxes to a certain degree, but the idea behind wealth redistribution was a very steep graduated income tax so that eventually everybody is totally equal. It's called socialism or communism. Same word. You say, oh no, communism and socialism are different things. Well, go read the Communist Manifesto. Do you know that Karl Marx did not use the word communism one time? He always used the word socialism. Go read Mikhail Gorbachev's book, Perestroika. He never used the word communism. He always used the word democratic socialism because that's not as scary, but it's the same result. It's always the control of the government, of everything, ultimately. Okay, now, I don't want to get stuck there except to say all of this was designed to bring about a one world government where the government would be in control, imposing its superior intellect upon all of the average people of the world. That was the whole idea behind this whole thing. We know what's good for you, and everything we're going to do is for the common good. That's one of their rallying cries. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is all this is prophesied in the Bible, and these became the main issues in our presidential election, and this is the reason that America was shocked when Donald Trump was voted in, because he tapped into these issues. He had not been living in the ivory towers of Washington. He had been out there on the street as a businessman, and he understood what the true heartbeat of America was. Well, of course, President Obama and Hillary Clinton were avid advocates of open borders, and we were having immigrants coming here just like a flood. And when President Trump said, oh no, we can't do that. We're going to have to get control of this. We have so much illegal immigration. And he started talking about building a wall, not only to stem the tide of illegal. Now, he was not against immigration, but he was against illegal immigration, unvetted, unscreened immigration. And when he started talking about building a wall, not only to stem the tide of illegal immigration, but to control the influx of drugs, because drugs are absolutely wrecking an entire generation of our society. We all know it. Everybody said, you know, that just makes so much sense. And so Americans voted against open borders and for illegal immigration in spite of what the pollsters said they should do. Now, beside all that, Americans who, in spite of the fact that President Obama said we're not a Christian nation, everybody said, wait a minute, we've been a Christian nation since our birth. What gives him a right to say we're not a Christian nation? And that he went ahead to prove what he meant by that, because the Bible is very strong against homosexuality and same-sex marriage. But President Obama became the poster child of same-sex marriage. He became the #1 cheerleader. And through his leadership, the tide rose and he was able to push it through the Supreme Court until same-sex marriage is now legalized in the United States of America. And before then, all the states that had an opportunity to vote voted for constitutional amendments against same-sex marriage. 31 states voted, 31 voted against it. But the elite courts and the judges said, no, you're too dumb to make your own decisions. We will make these decisions for you. And so they struck down constitutional amendment, state constitutional amendment after state constitutional amendment. And the night finally the Supreme Court voted 5-4. The same-sex marriage was protected by the Constitution. That evening, our White House was lit up in the rainbow colors of the gay community, celebrating the takeover of sodomy in America. And Americans said, wait a minute. And so when they voted against same-sex marriage, and they voted against the destruction of Judeo-Christian values that they saw was happening all around them. So the vote for Donald Trump was a vote against socialism. It was a vote for the return of Americanism. Furthermore, it was a vote for Israel and against UN Resolution 2334. Now let's pause there a moment because I want to make sure you understand what happened here. President Obama did not like Israel at all. President Obama and Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, were obstinate enemies, even though they tried to portray otherwise. And President Obama wanted to whip Israel in line and to force Israel to make compromises at the peace table that she did not want to make. Netanyahu stood fast. Well, now it's time for Obama's revenge. The election is over. His person, Hillary Clinton, has now lost. So he says, I'm going to do what I want to do before I leave office 2 months from now. And on December the 23rd, there was a vote taken at the UN. Now, President Obama was behind this vote. He was very much for it. The vote was taken on Resolution 2334, which stated that Israel's presence across the Green Line in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, was a violent violation, a flagrant violation of international law. Well, this was astounding because, you know, the Bible prophesies the Battle of Armageddon is going to be fought over Jerusalem. And yet here the world community had voted, and the United States had the veto power to just say no, and the whole thing would have collapsed. But they knew in advance. They had already had the wink and the nod from President Obama. Now remember, the vote is over, but Trump does not get inaugurated until January the 20th. So on December the 23rd, 1 month before inauguration, they voted in Resolution 2334. And as a result, international law says today that Israel's presence in East Jerusalem is a flagrant violation of international law, which means the United Nations could use that vote as a premise to invade Israel. And by the way, the Bible prophesies they will invade Israel. Zechariah 14:2 says, I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. Now I'm talking about prophetic fulfillments of 2017. Now let's look what happened at the inauguration of President Trump. Immediately upon his inauguration, he began dismantling the socialistic state that President Obama had set up. President Obama had signed executive order after executive order after executive order after executive order. And as soon as President Trump was inaugurated, the very next day, we see him signing executive orders to reverse all of Obama's executive orders. And he signed orders removing hundreds of regulations that were tremendously burdensome to business because President Obama was a socialist and he wanted government to control everything. Where you could build, how big you could build, how much fuel you could use, how much carbon you could give off. I mean, he wanted absolute and total control. But Trump said, wait a minute, that's not the American way. We got to get back to America being great again. Well, the next thing that happened, President Obama had signed us on to the Paris Climate Change Accord. Now, it wasn't a treaty, so it wasn't really binding. But he had done it because he knew he could not get the climate change treaty through Congress for it to be ratified, so he just enacted it like a dictator. But then when Donald Trump came along, he served notice we were withdrawing from the Paris Climate Change Accord because we were going to spend trillions of dollars, and over a period of almost 100 years, it wouldn't reduce the world's temperature by 0.2%. It was going to be trillions of dollars flushed down the drain for nothing except for massive wealth redistribution, for setting up the world's socialist government where wealth is shared among all, no matter whether a person works or whether they don't. Now, in the meantime, President Trump moves to withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership because he told all of us, look, all of our trade deals are wrong, and this is the worst of them all. And President Obama had signed that one, and could he get it through Congress? No, he couldn't. But he was doing everything through sleight of hand. Well, now then, President Trump comes along, withdraws, and the world is screaming. You know why? Because they thought they had their world government in hand, and now we've got this maverick by the name of Donald Trump that's coming along and saying, out, we're out, we're out. Not America. We're not going there. That's not the American way. And Europe is screaming, and the United Nations is screaming. And America's economy is booming because all of a sudden the burdens of these controlling regulations are being lifted off of us. Now, here's the question. Is this fulfilling the prophecy that America is not going to be a part of the world government? I absolutely believe it was. Then Trump signed executive orders banning immigration from several countries where vetting was impossible. Of course, we've lived through that struggle. The liberal courts move in and say you can't do that, even though the Constitution clearly says that's the president's responsibility. But even though the courts tried to knock it down, still, because of the vigorous enforcement by President Trump and the Border Patrol, illegal immigration quickly dropped by 50% in a matter of months. And then President Trump comes along and approves the Keystone XL oil pipeline. And business around the world is so excited, especially in America. The stock market has climbed 29% since the inauguration of Donald Trump. 29%, boom, boom, up it goes. Okay, now, I'm going to try to get a little bit more in here before we run out of time in today's program. Middle East peace efforts. President Trump promised to work for the ultimate deal, a peace deal between Palestinians and Israelis, something people have been trying to do for 70 years. No success. He said, I'd like to give it a try. He immediately appointed his two most trusted aides, his son-in-law Jared Kushner and his longtime lawyer of over 20 years, Jason Greenblatt, to work for peace in the Middle East. So where did President Trump go for his first foreign trip? To Saudi Arabia, of all places. Quite a shock. But while there, he got 50 Sunni leaders together and spoke to them and said, you're the key to stopping worldwide terrorism. And furthermore, you're bringing a disgrace on your Muslim religion because you're condoning all of this radical terrorism. You need to stand up and stop all this. And furthermore, Iran's just across the border, and they're moving toward a nuclear weapon because of the treaty that was signed by President Obama and the other major nations of the world. And once Iran goes nuclear, Iran's going to rule the entire Middle East. And Saudi Arabia knew this, and Bahrain knew this, and the United Arab Emirates knew it, and Jordan knew it, and Egypt knew it. And so immediately they started joining together with President Trump. Trump flew from Saudi Arabia to Israel, then visited with the Palestinians and said, I don't want to just sign a deal between Israel and the Palestinians. I want to create a regional peace. And the Bible says that the peace that's coming will be with many. So President Trump planned to seek multilateral agreement for the Middle East, and in so doing, he now has given Palestinians support so they can move without being stuck out there all by themselves. Very interesting to watch what's happening. Now let's move right along here because I want you to get this. Kushner and Greenblatt met with Mahmoud Abbas 20 times in the first 7 months. They were also meeting with Israel, with other Arab players. And then in November, Abbas asked Trump, after 8 months of this, look, you've talked to us. We've told you everything. You've talked to the Israelis. They've told you everything. You know where our red lines are, and you know where the ends don't meet. I'm asking you to offer an American plan for Palestinian-Israeli peace. And Trump promised to prepare the plan by the first part of 2018. However, during his campaign, Trump had promised to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. The Jerusalem Embassy Act, passed by our Congress in 1995, said that he had to do it. The only way he could get out of doing it was to sign a waiver. And when this waiver was signed, that would say it would not be in the national interest of the United States of America to sign this agreement. So for the last 44 times since 1995, every president came along and signed the waiver. But Trump had said he was going to move the embassy, and he loved to say he was a man of his word. He didn't just talk, he did it. Well, when the deadline came along, every 6 months a deadline comes along. The first deadline was June the 1st. Trump signed the waiver, and everybody said, oh no, he's like all the rest. He cited the peace negotiations that were ongoing, that he thought he was so near to getting the ultimate deal. The second deadline came on December the 4th of 2017. On December the 6th, President Trump announced the U.S. has recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Now watch, but that's the issue that's going to throw the world to Armageddon. We're talking about prophetic fulfillments.
We would like to wish you a wonderful Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Since this is the most wonderful time of the year and we are celebrating the birth of Jesus, we would like to share 7 awesome deals to celebrate the season with you. So we are offering up to 50% off on our most popular specials. To name a few, the Understanding the End Time DVD series, From Here to Armageddon collection, Salvation Package, and Understanding the Bible combo, each one with their companion workbooks, which includes outlines, quizzes, and answers. We are also offering a 2-year magazine subscription for just $20.17, our Super Cyber Sale for digital downloads, and the Ultimate Prophecy Package, which contains almost every product Irvin has ever produced. Don't miss out on these Christmas specials to share with your friends and family. To take advantage of these offers, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 or visit endtime.com.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter, the new book by Irvin's grandson, provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your connection to God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at End Time will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Order this brand new book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archives button.
Now, during Donald Trump's campaign, he had promised that he would move the embassy to Jerusalem and that he would declare Jerusalem the capital of the nation of Israel. Now, I want to remind you that the Jerusalem Embassy Act was passed by our Congress in 1995, but a lot of people don't know what that really is. I want to slow down now for a little bit, and we're going to be taking your calls before long, but before we do, I went to the governmental website, and I copied down what this law, the Jerusalem Embassy Act of 1995, what it actually says. I want to share it with you. Section 3 under timetable. Subsection A, statement of the policy of the United States. Jerusalem should remain an undivided city. Notice that. Jerusalem is supposed to be undivided, in which the rights of every ethnic and religious group are protected. 2, Jerusalem should be recognized as the capital of the state of Israel. Okay, now let's not gloss over this. So Jerusalem is supposed to be undivided, and it's also supposed to be recognized as the capital of the state of Israel. And 3, the United States Embassy in Israel should be established in Jerusalem no later than May the 31st of 1999. So what's our law say? Jerusalem's undivided, and Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Now, Israel says it all the time, but our law has been saying it since 1995. Israel says it all the time. Jerusalem is the eternal, undivided capital of the Jewish state. That's what this law says. Let's go a little bit further. This became law without President Clinton's signature on November the 8th, 1995. You know, if a law is passed by both houses of Congress and is sent to the president's desk, he can either sign it into law, he can veto it, kicking it back to the Congress. To override a veto, I think you've got to have 2/3 vote. Or if he doesn't want to go on record, but he doesn't want to veto it, but he doesn't want to sign it, he can just put it in his desk drawer, and if 10 days passes with no action, it becomes law. That's the way our law works. Well, that's what President Bill Clinton did. He didn't return it, and it became law. All right, now there's one more thing about this law that's written in, and it says there, not more than 50% of the funds appropriated to the Department of State for fiscal year 1999 for acquisition and maintenance of buildings abroad may be obligated until the Secretary of State determines and reports to Congress that the United States Embassy in Jerusalem has officially opened. Did you notice that even though President Trump announced that we were going to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, he went ahead and signed the waiver anyway? What's that all about? Well, he knew this was part of the law. If he didn't sign that waiver, then he's obligated to open an embassy in Jerusalem. But by signing the waiver, he has put off the cutting of funds to the U.S. State Department. Half of all funds to the U.S. State Department to support embassies around the world were to be cut until the Secretary of State had certified to the Congress that the embassy in Jerusalem was open. Well, Trump knew it wasn't going to be open that quickly, so he went ahead and signed the waiver. At the same time, though, he said we're going to go ahead with architectural drawings, with all of our plans, with looking out for contractors to build the embassy. That's where we are right now. Okay, now let's go back and rehearse, because this is a world changer. Now let's look at moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. The first deadline was June the 1st of 2017. Trump signed the waiver, citing the state of the peace negotiations as his reason. I want to do this right now. I think we're getting close to peace negotiations, so I'm going to sign the waiver. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to move the embassy. And all of us said, oh no, he's just like all the rest. But the second deadline was December the 4th, 2017. Now let's remember what's going on right now. Mahmoud Abbas has said to Jared Kushner and to Jason Greenblatt, the two key negotiators for President Trump, we're believing that you're going to give us a plan because we want you to put your cards on the table so that both the Palestinians and the Israelis can put up or shut up. Now that's where we are on December the 6th. I wonder why President Trump decided to move the embassy and to recognize Jerusalem as the U.S. capital at this time. I really personally was not expecting it as a person who follows this every day. I thought, well, it looks like we're getting really close to this agreement. Surely he's going to put it off at least one more time to see if he can close the deal. So I wonder why he went ahead. Let's think outside the box for just a moment. Is there a chance that when Jared Kushner and Jason Greenblatt laid the cards on the table in front of President Trump and said, these are all the factors, and they're trying to see if they can make all the ends meet, they came to an issue where it wasn't going to happen? Can you just see them in secret saying, okay, we think we can pretty much handle everything else except for one thing, Jerusalem. The Palestinians say there'll never be a peace agreement unless they have East Jerusalem as their capital. But the Israelis say, never. This is our eternal, undivided capital. We're not yielding. Trump may have said, what's the chances somebody will compromise? Greenblatt and Kushner shake their head and said, we don't see any compromise. Could it be that that's what provoked President Trump to take the unilateral action in the face of the whole world and say, we're going to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of the nation of Israel? Because unless he does that, if he leaves Jerusalem on the table, no deal this year, nor next year, nor 10 years from now, nor 20 years from now. It's been 70 already. Now, I don't have any inside information. I've just been following this closely, trying to figure out why did he do it now? Now, since we know what is going to happen, the Bible prophesies that they're going to get a peace deal done. But under the peace deal they're going to get done, Jerusalem's not going to be settled. It's still going to be left in limbo. That's the reason the peace deal is going to be an interim deal, not a permanent deal. The Bible says the Antichrist will confirm the covenant with many for 7 years. If it was a permanent deal, he would be confirming the deal forever. But instead, they're going to solve what they can. They're going to create a Palestinian state. They're going to put the Temple Mount under a sharing arrangement. But the one thing they're not going to do is settle the status of Jerusalem, because 7 years after the agreement is signed, the UN invades Israel to force Israel to give up East Jerusalem to the Palestinians. The Bible says it clearly. Zechariah 14:2, I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. Also, it says that in Revelation chapter number 16, it says that the kings of the east will come across the Euphrates River and come against Jerusalem to battle for the battle of Armageddon. So I'm talking about prophetic fulfillments of 2017. So interesting as we see what has happened here. So President Trump just stood in front of the whole world and announced the U.S. was recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. However, he signed the waiver to avoid having to open the embassy immediately. Okay, now what are the consequences? Almost all the nations of the world are condemning Donald Trump. I mean, the Arabs are saying you just destroyed the peace process. We're not coming back to the table. We might even move our embassies out of Washington, D.C., and on and on and on. And there's some rioting, there's demonstrations everywhere. So where's this going to result? Well, like I said earlier, the Bible says that most of the world governmental system under the process of globalization is going to go together. You can read it for yourself, Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 and 2. It talks about the beast there will reign 42 months. It's talking about a world governmental system that will persecute anyone that doesn't join it. So you've got the Antichrist as one world government here. You've got Israel and the United States here. You say, is that in the Bible? Yes, it is. One chapter earlier, Revelation 12, Verse 14 shows Satan coming down to make war against Israel. Israel is depicted there as a woman with 12 stars around her head. But there's given 2 wings of a great eagle to protect the woman from the face of the serpent for 3.5 years, which is the length of the Great Tribulation. So the picture that we're watching that has been triggered by President Trump taking his stand, the picture painted is the world here, Israel and the U.S. here. You say, does that make you afraid? No, it makes me very thankful, very proud, because the U.S. is standing for what God is standing for. The rest of the world is following the Antichrist and his one world governmental system. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's where we stand today. That's what's going on. We do have one segment left in the program, so we're going to be taking your calls in the rest of our program today. While we're preparing for that and while you're dialing, the number to call, by the way, is 877 End Time. I'd like to say to all of you out there, you're in the end time right now. 2017 was a time of great prophetic fulfillment. Will there be prophetic fulfillment in 2018? You better believe it. We're so close to the end now. Everything is speeding up. It's almost like we're getting ready to hit the rapids in a swiftly moving river. That's where we are right now. Okay. So for that reason, I'm asking you to prepare yourself for the most critical time in the history of the church. The Bible says, in this time just ahead of us, they that understand among the people shall instruct many. Don't you want to be one of those people? But you can't be unless you understand. We, fortunately, God has helped us to put together the Jerusalem Prophecy College. And it has 11 semesters. You go through that college, you'll know more about Bible prophecy than 99% of the graduates from theological seminary. And you will be qualified to be one of those that Daniel chapter 11, verse 33 says, they that understand among the people shall instruct many. And so I'm asking you today to become one of those. We are forming a new group called the End Time 1000. If you go through all 11 semesters of the Jerusalem Prophecy College, and by the way, the tuition for each semester is ridiculously low. We set it as low as we possibly could and still keep it functioning. So go to JerusalemProphecyCollege.com, and there you'll see your instructions on how to sign up. Get started today. I don't care how busy you are, carve out some time, make it your top priority, and get through the 11 semesters. I don't know how much time you have left, but hurry. JerusalemProphecyCollege.com. Become one of the End Time 1000 that will be here to help neighbors, friends, family, churches, towns. You can be one of those people. So do it today. JerusalemProphecyCollege.com.
Turn your scriptures from black and white into color. Experience the footsteps of Jesus. Understand Bible prophecy that is coming to pass right now. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter and the End Time team this spring 2018 for a life-changing trip to Israel and Jordan. Mark your calendar for April 26th through May 11th for this amazing journey. Call 1-800-END-TIME, that's 1-800-363-8463 and press 2, or go to endtime.com/Israel-tour to receive your information today.
End Time survives on the goodness of God, product sales, and donations from our wonderful partners. If you find End Time to be a blessing to your life, consider us in your year-end giving for 2017. Our End Time team cannot reach the world alone, but with our partners and the God we serve, nothing is impossible. To be a part of this great cause, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit endtime.com/give.
Well, here we are, just a few days left in 2017, and we're marching right down Main Street as far as prophetic fulfillment is concerned. I want to go quickly now for Brad and Glinda. They are a Facebook viewer, and they want to know, do you believe the Jews are the elect, and are they the ones in the tribulation? During that time, is the church out of here? I do not believe that the Jews only are the elect. You're referring to Matthew 24, verse 29 through 31. It says there immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be dark and the moon shall not give her light. The stars will fall from heaven. And then shall appear the sign of the coming of the Son of Man. And he will send his angels to gather his elect. Now, I was taught all my life that the Jews were the elect, that the church was gone. But I decided I better see if that was the truth or not. So I went to my Strong's Exhaustive Concordance and looked up elect. Once it refers, it's 13 times in the New Testament. Once it refers to Jesus. Once it refers to angels. And the other 11 times it referred to the church. I said to my dad, Dad, it says right here, the elect is the church. He says, I don't know. Well, the further I studied, the more I realized our theology was faulty. No, the elect will be any Jews that are saved, any Gentiles that are saved, because the church is going to be here all through this tribulation period. Jesus said it. Immediately after the tribulation, I will send my angels to gather my elect. And it says then, 2 will be in the bed, 1 taken, the other left. That comes right after that description. 2 will be in the field, 1 shall be taken, the other left. That's the rapture. So, no, we will be here during that time. Thank you for your question very much, Brad and Glenda. Let's go now to Joel from Oklahoma. Hello, Joel.
Hi, Brother Irvin. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. What's on your mind?
Well, I thought when it came to mind Zechariah 12:3, about Jerusalem being a burdensome stone to all those that try to hitch themselves to it.
Yeah, that's another scripture that everybody needs to know. It says I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone, and all that burden themselves with it will be ground to pieces. Those 15 nations that approved the resolution 2334 stating that Israel cannot be in East Jerusalem, I would not be in their shoes for $10 million.
Couldn't give it to me. Couldn't give me the money.
Yeah.
I had a question, Irvin. The Holy Ghost has really been good to me since I talked to you last, and I think you know what I'm talking about. I was moved to read the book of Isaiah, and chapter, and it talks about of Isaiah, and it talks about them flying, and I didn't understand what it was, and I don't know. The way I understand it is, could that be referring to like Operation Solomon, where they're flying the Jews in? It says in that day they'll fly. Do you think that could be reference to that?
I'm not recalling the exact passage. I don't know the words exactly, so I'm not sure I can answer you, Joel. Do you have it in front of you where you just read one verse?
Oh, I lost my place. Just a minute. I'd have to turn to it. I lost my place. I'm so sorry. I'll have to call you back again,
okay.
Irvin. I've lost my place, but look in there for me if you can. I think it refers to the Jewish nation flying. Are those okay? We go to in the beginning of Isaiah, it talks about those coming from the north and the south and the east and the west will be gathered, back to Jerusalem, and that's what I feel like it's referring to.
I'll tell you what you do, Joel. We got a lot of people waiting in line, so why don't you find it, and then maybe you could call back tomorrow, and we'll be able to discuss it more completely.
I had my spot right here, and I dropped it, and I forgot. I lost it.
Well, that's okay. No problem whatsoever. Be very interested. Give us a call tomorrow, and we'll talk about it.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay. No problem. Let's go now to Texas, and Joe's calling. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Irvin. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you.
Hey, I've been telling people for about a year that something's going to be happening because the 70-year prophecy in Zechariah, there's a 70-year prophecy. The horsemen, the red, white, black, and polka dot, red, white, black, and green Revelation, they're there in Zechariah 1, or some of them are. And so I knew that prophecy was a New Testament the 70 years, and the angel is talking to the Lord there, and he says, how long are you going to forget Jerusalem, which you've been upset with for these 70 years? And the Lord spoke good. He said, I've been upset with them a little bit, but I'm really upset with the nations around them, but I'm gonna be good to Jerusalem, and my temple shall be built. And I said, oh my goodness, something's going to happen 70 years. And of course, November 29th, 1947, 70 years ago, that's why Trump did it now. He waited, because it's been 70 years since the Declaration now, or the UN thing. But now May 14th is when they actually took the deal. But it's been 70 years, and it's the Zechariah chapter 1 prophecy, verses 12 through 16, I believe it is. My temple will be built.
Yeah.
So the ball is rolling.
Ed, we're sort of running out of time. Let me comment on that. I need to go back and read that more carefully. I believe, though, that Zechariah is prophesying about the building of the second temple. Do you remember that Jeremiah told the people, you're going to go into captivity for 70 years? The whole book of Jeremiah is devoted to Judah going into captivity to Babylon for 70 years, after which the temple would be built. And that's exactly what happened. I believe that this was a prophecy for back at that time. Now, we live in a very similar time now, because now it's time for the third temple to be built. Again, I need to go back and read it again, because it's been a while since I've been down that road. But I believe this particular prophecy was about that time back there when the temple was built by Zerubbabel.
But there's your horses. Your horsemen are right there, which I learned from you. And also, Zechariah was already back. He was already back. So I understand what you're saying, but I'm telling you, I've been telling people about this for a year.
Okay. I'll tell you what, let me take a look at it, because it's been a while since I read that particular passage, and I'll read it with great interest, and we'll maybe talk about it some more the rest of the week.
I really appreciate you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ed, and let's go. That was Joe. Let's go now to Ed, calling from right here in Texas. Hello, Ed.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you.
Very good. I was curious. We all know how much Trump has been working on the peace process. If there's a chance or even a slight possibility, do you think Trump might be trying to strong-arm the Palestinians into a treaty, that the Palestinians might think that it's better to settle a deal and sign a treaty than to have the U.S. Embassy put in Jerusalem?
Well, now that Trump has committed, I don't think he'll back out. However, if he could go ahead and get a deal now and say to them, look, I'll move our embassy to West Jerusalem. And he did say when he made his declaration, I am not saying where the borders of Jerusalem should be drawn. That's to be decided in the negotiations between the Palestinians and the Israelis. All I'm telling you is we're going to recognize reality, because the government of Israel's in Jerusalem. Everybody knows it. We're playing games here. So I'm moving our embassy to Jerusalem. However, he may say to them on the backside, look, I'm putting it in East Jerusalem, so that will not in any way preclude you still having your capital in East Jerusalem if it can be worked out in negotiations. That is a possibility.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That just popped into my mind the other night when the announcement was made, and wanted to get your input.
Yeah, well, we know ultimately what's going to happen. We know that all of Jerusalem is going to stay under Israeli control until the Battle of Armageddon, because we know that half of the city goes into captivity to the Antichrist and his world government during the Battle of Armageddon. That's Zechariah 14:2. It says, and half of the city will go into captivity. That happens during the Battle of Armageddon, which tells us that all the city was under Israeli control prior to the Battle of Armageddon. So I don't know exactly how it's going to work out, but I do know that's where we're headed. Thanks a lot, Ed. Let me see. Do I have time for one more? Let's try it. Let's go now to Carter. And Carter is calling from Virginia on Facebook. Hello, Carter. Are you with me?
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call. I'll make it quick.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand the symbolism of Jesus' return through the east gate of Jerusalem. What is the symbolic reasoning for that?
because Ezekiel chapter 44 says that the eastern gate will be sealed and will not be opened until the Lord comes, because the Lord hath entered in by it. So around 500 years ago, a Muslim ruler sealed the gate. He sent his masons down with plaster, and they plastered the gate shut because the Jews were saying, our Messiah is coming through that gate. And he said, oh, no, he's not. So they plastered it shut. That gate's been standing there closed for the last 500 years. And what is so interesting is he unwittingly fulfilled the prophecy by sealing it shut. The Bible says, it shall be sealed, it shall be closed. That's Ezekiel chapter number 44. And that's the reason the Lord's going to come in the eastern gate. Of course, the eastern gate opens right onto the area of the Temple Mount.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I think we can do one more. Let's go quickly to Julie from Pennsylvania. Hello, Julie.
Hi.
What's your question?
Nice to meet you, and I thank you for everything you're doing.
Well, I appreciate it very much.
I have several questions, but just now that I know I can call you, I'm going to start with one, and I'm wondering in Revelations 9:18, it says, by these three was the third part of men killed, and so on and so forth. And who are the three?
I think it tells us there. Let me go there real quickly. It's Revelation 9.
18.
And verse number 18. Here's what it says. It says in verse 17, and thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouth issued fire and smoke and brimstone. Those are the three things: fire, smoke, and brimstone. By these was the third part of men killed. And undoubtedly, that speaks of bombs, nuclear weapons, and I don't know exactly how it's all applied, but anyway, it says those are the three things that will be used to kill 1/3 of mankind during this war, the sixth trumpet war of Revelation chapter 9.
Okay. And in Revelation 11, verse 2, where it talks about the Gentiles, let me see, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. I think I heard you say something about those Gentiles being Muslims.
Yeah, when they put the Temple Mount under a sharing arrangement so that the Jews can have their temple there, they're not going to disturb the Dome of the Rock or the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Furthermore, they may even allow a Christian presence there, since they like to say Christians, Jews, and Muslims should all be able to worship there. I'm totally out of time, Julie. Sorry to have to cut you short. Thank you very much for joining us today for End of the Age. We'll be right back here tomorrow. We're going to continue talking about prophetic fulfillments of 2017.
End of the Age is a production of End Time Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. End Time Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.